Hello? Hello? Is anyone out there? Hello? Let me out! Let me out! Welcome to the Calling All Creeps podcast. My name is Bryce McCardle.
And I am Nathan. My last name's none of your business.
Paul.
It's an unfortunate last name, but it is mine.
It is. How does it feel to have two first names?
Man.
Or three first names, really, right?
At least I'm not my dad. His name is Michael Paul. Can you imagine being Michael Paul? Like, at least Nathan is kind of unique. I can call myself Nathaniel.
Nathaniel.
Yeah, I can call myself that if I'm feeling fancy.
I always forget your middle name. It's not Thomas.
It's
not Michael. It's not Tomias.
Don't even worry about it. It's Trevor. It's Trevor.
Trevor, yeah. God damn. It always feels like my little brother's middle name, which is Tyler, which is also just like a name. I always forget his name's just a name. My middle names are names also, but
Well, this is fascinating stuff, no doubt. But what are we talking about tonight, Bryce?
Tonight, Nathan, we are going to talk about being buried alive.
That's right. We thought that this show was just too cheerful because we decided to take a break from talking about children's cartoons in order to discuss the act of being buried fucking alive. So there we go.
Yeah, we love movies and TV shows and radio shows and all the things we love to talk about. But, there's a lot greater, more serious things on the line.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And this was your suggestion, wasn't it, Bryce?
Yeah. We had a couple other suggestions brought up, but this came out of it. And I'm pretty happy with how this came about. It was a fun research. Did you have fun researching this?
I did. It's a subject that I first piqued my interest when I read the Edgar Allan Poe story, which we'll get into. But we've had some recent conversations lately regarding ways to die and which ones might be worse than others. And I think you might have said being buried alive, premature burial, might be your number one. Is that right?
I did bring it up as a terrible way to die. Again, only from first-hand experience, drowning is pretty bad. And you had brought up burning alive, which obviously drowning and burning are the two ways that are most commonly talked about. But there's another one. If you have a fear of being buried alive, that is called taphophobia.
Oh, I didn't know there was a name for it.
Yeah, taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive, coined in 1891 by Italian psychiatrist Enrico Morselli. Mm. And, when you get into phobias such as this, I would say they're more described as an irrational fear. Rather than just a regular fear. I would assume everybody listening to this has a regular fear of being buried alive. If someone said, "Would you like to be buried alive?" you would go, "Fuck, nah, not really. That sounds fucking terrifying."
Well, maybe not would you like to be buried alive, but probably most people don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. I've never spent much time thinking about it.
See, I spend a lot of time thinking about death. Thinking about ways I'd like to die, ways I'd like to spend the afterlife, ways I'd like to be buried, etc., etc., etc.
You're a man of taste, a connoisseur of the morbid.
Yeah, no, I spend a lot of time in cemeteries, and
unironically.
But when it comes to an irrational fear of the subject, this is a place I would put my own father. I think buried alive, if someone asks, of course, that's fucking terrifying. No one wants to be buried alive. Sounds horrible. But this is something my dad has brought up probably an obscene amount of times.
Interesting.
He has constantly expressed a deep-seated fear of being buried alive. You know, if you bring up anything related to the subject at all, he's just like, he goes into a tirade of how horrible it would be to be buried alive. So I would say my father suffers from taphophobia.
I wonder how such a fear develops. How does something like that get on your mind? Because, with modern medical science, you're not going in the ground until you're dead as fuck. Like, no doubt.
Dead as fuck. He's also a big, I know, I'm sure we'll get into this, and we can get into it today. But I'm sure we'll get into another subject as well. But there's a lot of ways to be buried. There's a lot of ways to die. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways to be buried. And due to his, again, taphophobia, my father is a big believer, and he wants to be cremated.
That's what I was just about to say that, man. This is just another argument for cremation. If you ask me, why do we need to bother with burial at all?
Well, okay. Well, before we get into it, I guess I think there's a cause for revisiting this in the future. But is that something you would like?
To be cremated? Yes, no, we've actually had this conversation before on the podcast. The Headless Horseman episode, we had a bit of an argument about us, because you were like, isn't it the most important thing ever to have a tomb and stuff? And I was like, fucking no, just fucking cremate my body, dude. But it didn't occur to me. This didn't occur to me. Now it's kind of just like, yeah, there's yet another reason to be cremated. Don't have to worry about any of this stuff.
Yeah, you certainly cannot be buried alive if you're cremated. Which, I don't know if that's my father's primary reason, but I would go as far to say it definitely is a part of consideration to be cremated. Because being buried alive, again, is just absolutely horrifying. Me, myself, mm-hmm. I would not like to be I wouldn't like to be buried alive. But I especially would not like to be cremated. I would like to not be cremated more than I would like to not be buried alive. If that makes sense.
Okay. Everybody has their tastes and preferences.
Everybody has their tastes and preferences. Okay. So buried alive, or premature burial, or the act of burying someone alive, the word is vivisepulture. Fun word. Being buried alive has caused societal panic, a variety of torture. It has been as a cause of medical accidents, murder, execution, and stunts.
Yes, the amazing Buried Alive Man.
Are you familiar with a lot of buried alive stunts?
Oh yeah, like when I was a kid, I used to watch those documentaries on TV about magicians and stuff, professional magicians who would sort of who were really just performing stunts, like public stunts. Right. Buried in concrete and stuff like that.
I also, before I get further into this, the day we are recording this is Monday. I believe it's the June 22nd, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Monday, June 22nd. Obviously, this podcast is not coming out Monday, June 22nd. But I've just gotten off. Today, on day of recording, is Summerween. If anyone is a fan of the show Gravity Falls, or doesn't live under a rock, I guess. I miss living under a rock. I lived under a rock for many years, and now I don't. Living under a rock is great. But today is Summerween. So
I will admit.
So to you, Nathan,
yes.
Happy Summerween. To all those listening, happy late Summerween.
I guess I've been living under a rock because I didn't know Summerween was a thing until probably this week when you told me about it. Because I was like,
really?
Yeah, we were talking about your album, and I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely coming out in October, right? And you're like, no, it's coming out in June. And I'm like, fucking what? It's a Halloween album. And
yeah, we're doing
Big yawn.
we're doing a Hocus Pocus. We're doing a Summerween. And yeah, Summerween has kind of become part of the culture now. But if you and we'll do a whole episode itself on Gravity Falls.
Never seen it.
Which is a cart. Okay, well, I recommend it. I mean, you'll watch it when I bring it up as an episode. But if you want to watch it in between, then it's very fun.
More like
it's very, very like Over the Garden Wall.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very Over the Garden Wall-esque, but more if you were into cryptids and conspiracy theories.
More like Gravity Balls.
More like grab these balls. Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
But anyways, so so we just threw our first ever Summerween party here at the house, and so I'm a little late coming to this recording, and I'm a little intoxicated, so bear with me. But anyways, we are talking about being buried alive.
Yes, we are. At some point.
So, if you are buried alive, you most likely will die.
Yeah.
People buried alive will often die due to suffocation, dehydration, starvation, or even hypothermia. So back in the 18th and 19th century, there's a big panic going on. Sensationalist newspapers and Gothic literature just ramp up the fear. They're lighting the fire under this. You're hearing about it. You know it's a possibility. And between newspaper and Gothic literature, in the 18th and 19th century, this is on your fucking mind. It's totally fucking possible that you know, today in 2026, the chances of you being buried alive are probably pretty slim. And we'll talk about some recent cases as well. But again, out of the 8 billion or however many unfucking believable amount of people are alive.
There's like 8 billion
on the Earth right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it billion? Yeah. I can't. 8 billion. Probably 8 billion people.
There's like 8 million people in just New York City by itself. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These numbers. I don't know. Can you believe we just achieved our first trillionaire with Elon Musk?
I can believe it. He's everybody's favorite person.
Everybody's favorite person, yeah. Crazy times we live in. But there's 8 billion people or so on Earth right now. And we'll talk about some recent cases. But again, compare, a few cases here and there compared to 8 billion people. It's a pretty slim chance that you, listener, are going to be buried alive.
Pretty slim chance back in the day, too, just that there was a public hysteria. It happened. There are cases of it happening, but for the most part, it was just like, it was the Victorians doing what the Victorians do, which is have all kinds of weirdly specific hang-ups and paranoias about things. So
Absolutely. And, and at a time where media is starting to be widely, consumed via newspapers and literature, kind of the same way today. If I hear about something, someone all the way across the world is going to be hearing about it too. And that's crazy. And if it's something that freaks me out, it could freak someone out and somewhere completely different. If something that affects me directly freaks me out, it can freak somebody out that it'll never directly affect. And so this is something, sort of similar. That's like a big thing I think about sometimes is the mass information leads to a lot of fear today, because back in the day, to a degree, if something didn't happen to you or someone you knew in your hometown, it probably didn't happen. It probably wasn't that big of a deal. It probably wasn't something to worry about. Nowadays, if something happens somewhere else, I can fear that can happen to me. I can hear about it immediately. And so I mean, it can cause a huge thing, sort of like the Satanic Panic back in the 80s, not that long ago. Were satanic cults everywhere sacrificing your kids and shit? Probably not.
Nope,
But
just some edgy kids in Norway making metal.
right, and there surely were cases, of murder and stuff like that, and people blaming Satan and such on it. But all of a sudden, everybody could hear about it. So it wasn't happening to you, and maybe it wasn't happening in your state or your county or your town. But, it could, and so you could freak out about it. Even back then, yeah, probably the chances were pretty slim it would happen to you. But you could read about it in the paper, and you could read about it in literature, in, Edgar Allan Poe stories. And all of a sudden, this is on your mind. And this is the real fear. I mean, this could really, conceivably, this could really happen to you. And so, due to the medical field being what it was, things such as faint breathing, catalepsy, comas, cholera, hypothermia, apoplexy, these could result in you being buried alive. These could result in a state of suspended animation and could be commonly mistaken for death. Even people who were heavily sedated or suffering severe trauma.
Yeah, I mean, like, it could happen, but again, it was more of a hysteria than anything. I was going to ask if you read the Edgar Allan Poe story, the very famous story that he wrote about this subject, in which he was basically taking advantage of the public paranoia around this issue. He wrote a story called, I'm pretty sure it's just called The Premature Burial.
Yes, he has a few things about being buried alive, which we'll talk about. But yes, there is the premature burial. We'll talk a little on that and a little on the 1960s Roger Corman movie adaptation of it as well.
I didn't know there was a movie.
Back in the 60s, Roger Corman did a ton of Edgar Allan Poe movie adaptations, most of which included Vincent Price as a main character. The Premature Burial doesn't include Vincent Price, but most of them did, and overall, they're very fun. If you want to go check them out, I would say go check them all out. If I had to recommend one, I really, go watch Roger Corman's The Tomb of Ligeia.
Indeed.
Yeah, but so back in the day, all of those things could result of you being in a state where you could be mistaken for dead. And physicians relied on, today really, really rudimentary tests like tickling your feet. It might tickle your feet with feathers, or applying hot irons, so you're sticking hot rods underneath your fingernails, or waiting for a mirror to fog up under your mouth to detect breath. And there were some really, again, for the time, maybe not rudimentary feeling, but some really, things that were determined to see if you were alive or not. And there's a lot of things medicine didn't understand that could be happening in your body that those might not apply to. And also you have to consider not everyone had access to doctors. And so a lot of people were just buried without ever seeing a doctor. If the dude seemed dead, or the person seemed dead, you might just go ahead and bury them. You're not going to travel into town to go see a doctor to confirm they're dead. You as a person, you know what dead looks like. They're dead. What are you going to do about it? So you just bury somebody. And especially, you know, in the 1800s, they would bury bodies really quickly to avoid the spread of disease. I mean, we'll get into more episodes on cemeteries and burial practices. But you know, spread of disease is a really important decision at this time. You know, you might not think of it so much today for yourself, but you know, back then that was a considerable cause. Is what you're going to do with your dead bodies and how diseases of what the dead body could spread to other people. You know, you got to think of water sanitation and ground sanitation and stuff. And so between there being a ton of reasons for you to appear dead and a ton of ways for them to check if you're dead that might not work for that, and then the fact that you might not ever see a doctor, or you might just be buried quickly to prevent the spread of disease, to a degree, you know, it could be pretty easy to be buried alive. So let's go ahead and get into some cases, some real life cases of being buried alive. I've got several here. I'm just going to go ahead and run through some of the ones I've written down. Does that sound good to you, Nathan?
Sounds exquisite. Sounds like a good time.
Okay. 1937. Angelo Hayes, 19-year-old French guy, crashes his motorcycle. Severe head trauma, declared dead, buried. And an insurance investigator thought the burial was too hasty. Dug him up 2 days later to find him alive and in a coma. Later on, he recovered and toured the country exhibiting his patented safety coffin. Boom, 1930s. Cases of being buried alive. Closer to home, 1987, Stephen Small was kidnapped for ransom, buried alive in a wooden box with, and I say with, an air tube, and still suffocated before the ransom was paid. What's that, 50 years ago or so? Coming up on 50 years ago? 1885, an American man called Jenkins was dug up and found flipped over, his hair pulled out all over his head, and scratches in the coffin. Man, you know, he was dead, but he, you know, dug him up, found buried alive, man. He'd freaked out inside of his own coffin. 1886, a Canadian girl called Collins was exhumed and her burial shroud was torn to shreds, and her knees were drawn up to her chin, and her arms were twisted behind her head. 1915, American woman Essie Dunbar was buried after a bout of epilepsy, and after being buried, was exhumed after only a few minutes of being buried, when her sister asked to see the body just one more time, and was found to be alive, supposedly, and this supposedly triggered mourners to flee, screaming in terror, and for ministers to fall into her open grave. Again, some of these, you know, as we'll see, you know, but, you know, supposedly it happened. Supposedly, she was brought back up to be seen one more time, and people fled in terror, and ministers fainted at the sight of this body being alive. Much closer to home, 2014, two separate Greek women, separate people, separate times, were buried alive and were heard screaming in the earth. Passerbys to the cemetery just heard screaming coming from under the ground, and when they were exhumed, both of them were found dead. One from suffocation, the other from heart failure. Closer to home still, 2018, a Brazilian woman was buried and people heard noise from under the ground, and she was dug up unbelievably 11 days later and found self-mutilated and unfortunately had died just before becoming exhumed. And also, supposedly, the digging up of her body was caught on camera. I didn't go looking for it, but supposedly you can. Supposedly, there's camera footage of her being dug up, and she had just died just before being exhumed after being heard screaming in the ground. 2020, an American child was declared dead, and some of these aren't, some people don't get fully buried. And this is the case where in 2020, an American child was declared dead and found breathing while they were preparing to embalm her. 2022, a woman was found alive in a body bag. 2011, a Russian woman woke up in her coffin during her funeral. Let's jump back a bit here. 260 BC, after the Battle of Changping in China, 200,000 people were purposely buried alive. And this becomes, sometimes this is completely accidental. Again, sometimes a form of torture and a form of murder, a form of punishment. Ancient German tribes would bury people alive for being dishonorable, of showing shameful vices like cowardice. In medieval England, live burial was punishment for sodomy, bestiality, and for people dealing with the Jewish. If you're making deals with the Jewish people, you could be buried alive. Ancient Persians would bury people alive to appease gods. Romans and Christians would wall up people to die, either to see if a god would save them or for martyrdom. In Denmark and Sweden, women who were adulterous or who were thieves would be buried alive. In Rome, you could be buried alive for rape, infanticide, or theft. 16th century Netherlands, people would bury women alive for heresy. 17th century Russia, people would bury women alive who killed their husbands. Many people were buried alive during the Holocaust. And then there are some stunts, like 1992, escape artist Bill Shirk buried himself alive and was almost killed when his coffin collapsed under several tons of earth. 2010 and 2011, 2 Russian men buried themselves alive. One of them buried himself alive to overcome his own personal fear of death, and the other for good luck. This one guy buried himself alive for good luck. Both of them died, though, in 2010, 2011. In 2021, YouTuber Mr. Beast buried himself alive for 50 hours. And then in 2023, buried himself alive again for one whole week. Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine being buried alive for one whole week?
I don't think any amount of money could inspire me to do so.
How long do you think you could be buried alive for?
I respectfully decline to be buried alive for any amount of time. That's going to be a no for me. I will cremate myself on the spot.
You just spontaneously combust.
Yep, light myself on fire.
I hate even bringing it up because I'm sure we'll do a whole episode on it. But we were speaking about my dad earlier, but that's my little brother's preferred death. My little brother, his preferred death is to spontaneously combust.
Well, how about them apples?
he would just...
If you're ever in a scrap, like instead of instead of carrying a cyanide pill with you to like a suicide pill, I would just carry around a gas canister, and like if I'm ever in a scrape, I'll just douse myself in gasoline.
Yeah,
and light myself on
I've
fire.
just got a pocket gasoline tank and a match, and
Damn right.
So I know you had talked about your fear of being burned alive. Do you think if you were faced with the situation of being buried alive in a box 6 feet under the ground, would you choose to be burned?
Well, I don't think I have a fear of either of these things. I thought it would be it's more painful to be burned. But like I said last time that we talked about this, I think you made a convincing argument that it would be worse to be buried because of how long it would take to die. So
yeah. So you think you would suffer through the agony of burning if you had the choice? Again, if tomorrow you were buried alive 6 feet under the ground in a wooden box, and you're not in one of these safety coffins, which we'll get into in a minute. If you had a pocket of gasoline or whatever, and a match, you'd burn yourself alive.
Yeah. I see your point. I suppose. I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of getting burned at the stake or something like that. But in which case, there's an idea that you would die of asphyxiation.
That's what I always think about
first.
being burned alive. I would just hope I would die from the asphyxiation or smoke and
That's
inhalation.
what a lot of modern commentators on the subject like to say. Oh, well, don't worry, guys. Asphyxiation would kill you first. I'm not convinced that was always the case, but I would hope so if it came down to myself at the stake. But yeah.
Do you think there'd be enough oxygen to burn yourself alive if you were buried underground?
If I was burned underground?
No, let's say you're buried underground.
Okay.
And let's say you have the ability
I
to
see what
say,
you're saying.
I could die over an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. But I have the choice right now to burn myself alive because I have my patented Calling All Creeps Burn Myself Alive kit
Coming soon.
in my pocket. Do you think if you lit that fire, do you think you'd even have enough oxygen to supply the fire?
If I'm breathing, there's oxygen.
Well, there's oxygen.
If I'm breathing and I'm alive,
Or do you think you would just severely burn yourself and also still be buried alive? You'd just be like, I'm buried alive and severely burned?
I think the only way for us to answer that question is if you try it out, Bryce, and let us know.
I should try it out in person. And so, and people have been found buried alive. Grave robbers have found people buried alive. People who are about to embalm or dissect somebody have found people buried alive. People dropping the coffin as they're about to put it into the grave have found people buried alive. Absolutely terrifying. If you were any of those people, that's not. If you're like I don't know who the person who carries the coffin is, a pallbearer or something like that. If you're a pallbearer or a grave robber or a mortician about to do your daily job, can you imagine? I don't know. That's got to be like your worst nightmare, to find someone still alive when you're about to perform one of those things. Mm. And back in the day, waiting mortuaries were a thing. And waiting mortuaries were also an extra charge. And these would be mortuaries where people would keep the body for days or weeks at a time just to be sure that somebody died. Even in Paris, the city morgue installed large glass windows, and people would crowd around to view decomposing corpses. How badass is that? They have the catacombs and glass-walled morgues.
Indeed, Bryce, a very cheerful thought.
So let's talk on some of the myths, because while there are several real cases like we just talked about, there are also several myths with being buried alive. Roman Emperor Zeno was buried alive and supposedly cried out for 3 days. Cried out for 3 days to be let out, but his wife and his subjects hated him so much they refused to open the tomb.
That story is likely apocryphal, which I'm sure you're about to say.
Yes. As the internet had told me, apocryphal for sure. 212 BC, 460 Chinese scholars were burned alive. 563 AD, Scottish druid turned Christian buried himself alive as a human sacrifice, and funnily enough was later dug up, found to be alive, and when he purported that the afterlife had no heaven or hell, was reburied alive.
Well, that's just unnecessary, man. I think that guy was just depressed.
Yeah, or, if he, supposedly went to some sort of afterlife and came back and then they buried, they dug him up after he sacrificed himself and declined, it lets you know that your own thoughts on the afterlife were false. Yeah, they just again, probably a myth, but supposedly just buried him back up. They say, I don't want to hear that. Let's go back to being underground. And speaking of, things like waiting mortuaries and Paris morgues, Irish wakes are also a thing. Irish wakes usually last a day or two, with the family watching over the body in the home. And there's a lot of reasons for this to happen, mourning and such. But supposedly one of the reasons is also to ensure that somebody's really dead. You're watching, you've got the dead bodies, hopefully in your house, and the family's coming in, and over 24 to 48 hours, you double checking like this guy's really dead, right? There are also some famous people who were afraid of being buried alive, like my father. George Washington was supposedly afraid to be buried alive and requested that they wait 3 days after he died. I think that was the last thing he requested, or the last thing he wrote in his will, or something like that. Alfred Nobel, of Nobel Prize fame, asked in his will for his arteries to be severed and for his body to be burned to prevent premature burial. The famous Hans Christian Andersen kept a note on his bedside table that said, "I only appear to be dead," just in case. And also asked his wife to cut his veins when he died, just to be sure. Frederick Chopin asked to be cut open to ensure that no premature burial happened to him.
Chopin was a strange guy, by all accounts. An eccentric person in general.
Tell me about him. Who the hell is Frederick Chopin?
A famous 19th century composer. He famous for his moody piano pieces, kind of similar to the Beethoven sonatas, I suppose. Sensitive, sad sack composer of moody, emotional music, who was an eccentric and famously dated George Sand, the poet. So what you're telling me about him doesn't surprise me very much.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've heard the name Chopin, but I know you're a nerd. So I figured you would know a little bit more.
Yeah, he's only one of the most famous composers of all time, so,
Next to you.
Yes, next to me.
If you are listening now, or some hundreds of years later, I'm sure you will all remember Nathan Paul, famous composer.
Because I will have killed all the other composers, so that I'm the only one left to remember.
Good. That's what we like to hear. No, seriously, if you are a fan of music at all, I implore you to go listen to Nathan's music.
Yeah, check out my freaking TikTok because that's where I actually get my views nowadays. Nobody watches my YouTube anymore, but my TikTok, yeah, people watch that.
You still got a lot of good interaction on your YouTube.
Yeah, I get some. I get a little tiny bit.
Oh. Well, you get more interaction on your YouTube channel than I've ever gotten on anything. So
you just gotta get on TikTok and be a whore. That's all there is to it. It'll happen.
yeah. But anyways, Nathan is very good. Nathan, what song did you just put out today, right?
A couple days ago now, I put out a song called "I Want to Kiss My Sleep Paralysis Demon," which did some numbers and got shared around, and I got put out a music video for it, another claymation thing.
Yeah, Nathan's working on some great claymation stuff, and it is honestly, I'm a big music video fan, and I keep track of music videos that make a good mental impression on myself. Off the top of my head, I always think of 3 Days Grace music video, Break. I think it was a great music video. But Nathan, yeah, put out a video for a song, I Want to Kiss My Sleep Paralysis Demon, right?
That's right.
That is one of my favorite music videos of all time. Absolutely go watch it on YouTube. Was it today that you put out your full version of I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, your Ink Spots cover?
Yeah, I put that out yesterday, and I sent you a link to it today.
Okay, today, yeah. Well, that was also fun. Are you putting out a new album soon?
I think for the next little bit, I'm just going to focus on making singles because those, it's easier to drive engagement and get attention from that. I mean, one of my recent singles even got like reviewed by somebody on TikTok. Like people pay attention to it. It's easy to sell singles.
No, that definitely seems to be the trend. As smaller singles and smaller releases. But go listen to Nathan's new music, man. He's been putting out tons of really goddamn great stuff. Again, like Chopin, afraid of being buried alive, and very talented.
A fear that I live with every day. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Bryce. Exactly like Chopin.
So, if you're like, okay, wow, being buried alive, that sounds fucking great. Where can I get more of that? There's a lot of good media about being buried alive. Like we talked earlier, there's 1962's Premature Burial, the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe adaptation. 1972's The Screaming Women. 2007's Buried Alive. Again, Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, Premature Burial, The Cask of Amontillado, Berenice, 2010's Buried, 1990's Buried Alive, 2004's Kill Bill 2, CSI's Grave Danger 2-part episode in 2005, City of the Living Dead, Casino, Interview with the Vampire, Prestige, The Vanishing, The Serpent and the Rainbow. There's some great radio shows like Lights Out's Burial Service, The Hermit's Cave, Buried Alive, Suspense's 6 Feet Under. There's another radio show which I've got such a vast collection, it was hard to dig through, but it's one that's always stuck with me. But I couldn't find exactly which radio show did this. But there's a really great radio show about a couple that's on a vacation or a honeymoon or something. And on the radio, they hear about somebody that's just escaped a mental asylum or a prison or something like that. And they decide to stop in this little town. And in this little town, there's a carnival, a little fair going on. And they're like, okay, well, that's great. Bunch of people around, probably no fear of this escaped convict out and about. A lot of people, somebody probably noticed some guy like that. And so they're having their fun little night on the town. And there is a a little carny guy who offers to pay somebody so much money. I don't remember what the amount, what the sum is, but a considerable amount of money to be buried alive for several days with a glass window and an air tube as part of the show. And so this guy, against his wife's, wishes, he says, that's a lot of money. We could really use the money. And so he subjects to be buried alive. This carnival guy, I think, again, I'm trying to do this all on memory, who I think purports to be a doctor, buries him alive, and everyone's around, and it's all, yippee yahoo, and the days go by, and his wife's in this strange town all alone, and her husband's buried alive. And it's the day that he's supposed to be dug up, and she shows up to where this carnival is being held, and the carnival has moved on. And of course, it's late at night and nobody's there to see him being dug up, and obviously very terrifying. And she ends up being pursued in the night by this guy that buried her husband alive, and then he, outs himself as he's not really the doctor or the carny guy that does this act. He's actually the escaped mental patient or convict or whatever, who's pretending to be this other guy, and he's just really buried her husband alive. But then he takes her into her cabin, into his cabin or whatever, his little trailer, and he's working on some sort of telepathy where he can transfer like her husband's mind into his wife's body, and his wife's mind into her husband's body. And I don't know, something like they eventually the husband and wife team end up switching his mind into her husband's body, who's buried alive, and they get out or something or other. I don't know. It's very good. It's very confusing. But that's my memory of it, and you can probably look that up and find it. But there's a lot of good radio shows out there about being buried alive.
Speaking of media about this subject, do we want to touch upon the Edgar Allan's Poe story a little bit?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Premature Burial, I read it recently. Not even for this podcast, I just read it recently because I like Edgar Allan Poe. And this happened to be one of the ones I checked out. And it's called, rather uncreatively, The Premature Burial.
Exactly.
And it's Poe taking advantage of the feeling that was already in the air. It was published in like 1844, I believe, in like a newspaper at first. And he was very much taking advantage of the paranoia that was already well underway about the subject. And like a lot of Poe's stories, it has this familiar theme of a character that is fixated on a specific fate that they fear, like obsessed with something happening and becoming a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's this guy who suffers from catalepsy, and which is essentially like, I don't know, maybe you could describe it better than me, Bryce, but it's like a sort of paralysis, a condition where you can potentially be mistaken for dead when you're not.
Yeah, you can enter a sort of suspended animation. You absolutely appear dead. I mean, catalepsy, I think even to this day, it's just terrifying to sound. Like, if you are a person who could experience catalepsy or, experience a form of, becoming catatonic. I assume this has to be a fear of yours.
Well, it certainly is a fear of this character's, and he spends the story dreading what he considers to be the inevitable. And, one day he wakes up in a dark, enclosed space and seems to have been buried alive. He freaks out and draws the conclusion that despite all of his efforts to prevent this, it's consumed his entire life, and he's cannot live a normal life because of this obsession. And he wakes up one day in a dark enclosed space and thinks he's been buried alive. Turns out he's just sleeping in a bunker. He's out at sea somewhere, and his friends come and get him. And this episode snaps him out of his obsession, and that's pretty much that. So weirdly, for an Edgar Allan Poe story, it doesn't end with somebody dying, but you get the idea. It's very creepy if you read it. And of course, obviously, there's also Fall of the House of Usher, among other things. And Poe was interested in this sort of idea. The thought of being buried alive is something that would appeal to his sensibilities naturally.
Yeah, like the Cask of Amontillado. That's something I think about tons, is where, he lures this man into these underground labyrinths, these underground, what would you call them? Catacombs.
Catacombs,
yeah.
Yes.
These cool places for storing wine. And he lures this man down there who's ruining his life, walls him up alive. And there's a lot of great media out there of people being walled up behind a wall of bricks, such as this,
yeah,
or put behind some sort of wall to scream for no one else to hear.
That story is actually hilarious. If you read it, it's very funny.
The Cask of Amontillado?
Yeah, it's a dark comedy, really. I could brick you into a wall right now, Bryce.
You could, and you should.
Yes, one of these days I will.
So, what did people do with this fear? Some people, wrote stories, did newspapers, and some people built safety coffins.
Yeah, there were a shit ton of patents in the 19th century for safety coffins.
Yeah, safety coffins went on the rise in Europe, especially in Europe and the U.S., featuring caskets with air pipes, alarm bells, flags, wires, spring-loaded coffins, ground-level doors that would open if anyone moved. Examples like an 1882 coffin had an air pipe that also acted as a movable periscope so someone could see it move. In 1890, a burial vault was built with an escape hatch and air supply, was lined with felt, so if someone was in a panicked, was in a panic, they wouldn't hurt themselves. And they also had a rule to remove the body from the coffin when put into this vault. 1972, Duke Ferdinand had a window and an air tube, as well as a lock on the coffin and tomb, and was buried alive with the keys to both the coffin and the tomb.
More like Dookie Ferdinand, if you want my opinion. Aw, shit. Still got that edge.
I wish it was a Green Day reference. It is not. 1885, a coffin with a button inside that would set off an alarm and turn on a fan attached to a tube, and would also set up a flag. 1868, a coffin with a bell, an air tube, an escape ladder, and a glass door was patented. 1882, a coffin with a T-shaped pipe that, when turned, would turn on an above-ground indicator, and when pushed, would lift up the glass cover. 1843, a coffin with a spring lid activated by any slight movements. And although you can go back and you can read an abundance of patented safety coffins and a bunch of coffins that were probably built without patents, supposedly no one has ever been buried alive in a safety coffin and at least was saved.
Yeah, no, because it's just extremely fucking unlikely that it will happen.
No, exactly, yeah.
So, it was
But it does blow my mind that with such a fad of these safety coffins, not even one person historically at least was ever saved by one of these. I mean, I've heard of people personally, and I've read the books, and I've watched the movies, and I've read the stories of these safety coffins, these people who put a lot of effort into this stuff. And, again, luckily, none of these people were ever actually buried alive and had to use any of these gadgets.
No, it was just paranoid rich Victorians being paranoid. What can you say? Like, you're not going to get buried alive. Even if you're living in 1860, you can pretty much bet your ass you're not going to get buried alive. Yeah,
you're probably just going to actually die from something.
Yeah, no, you're going to be dead as fuck. You're going to catch a cold, you're going to stub your toe and die 2 hours later. Yeah.
And just be actually fucking dead.
Just like get a splinter and then your doctor's like, you have pneumonia. It's interesting. I made extensive notes on the subject, but you made even more extensive notes. You even covered the 2 specific cases of burying alive that I was going to talk about. So good on you.
Is there anything else you'd like to bring up on it?
Let me take a quick cursory glance here at my notes. Well, I guess I can briefly mention that in 1896, this guy, William Tebb, an English businessman with a peculiar fascination with premature burial, co-founded the London Association for the Prevention of Premature Burial. All about those catchy titles, those Victorians. And he contributed a very long book on the subject called Premature Burial and How It May Be Prevented, with special reference to trance, catalepsy, and other forms of suspended animation. Again, all about those catchy titles. But in the book, we get many of the classic preventative measures we associate with the period. It runs more than 500 pages and is chock full of lurid tales about people meeting such a fate. And Tebb endorsed a specific safety coffin in his book that came with a long tube that would stick out of the ground and into an iron box. And if the person inside the coffin moved, the box would open and shine an electric lamp that would alert people above of activity.
Wow.
Hundreds of coffins like this were patented. It was a whole industry, so it's hard to say how realistic this fear actually was for the average person, of course, but it sure did move numbers. There was lots of money to be made in this kind of thing.
And surprisingly enough, the money being made wasn't even in the sort of funeral business. As we know, the funeral business can kind of gouge families on coffin prices and burial prices and funeral prices and such. But most of these safety coffins and such built on these fears weren't even part of that. They were part of just other people who were, capitalizing on the fear. But honestly, oh wow, I didn't know that book existed. That might be the next book I need to read.
All 500 pages of it, yeah. It does seem like something you would have on your shelf. If nothing else, to take it down every once in a while and flip through it. And I can watch the childlike glimmer in your eyes as you peruse the book and read about people dying underground. Such things bring joy to your heart, a whimsical dimple to your cheek.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
We're all about that, man. This is not a very whimsical episode as far as they go, but it has its moments.
So how would... Nathan.
Yes.
How many disembodied skulls out of 10?
How do I rate?
How would you rate being buried alive?
It's pretty good. I would say probably if I'm to engage with this question seriously, which I'm going to because I think that's an interesting challenge. I'm going to say, not in terms of what I like it. Of course, I wouldn't like it, but how effective is it as a concept in keeping with the calling all creeps general concept? I'd say a good 9 out of 10 disembodied human skulls. It's maybe the highest rated thing on this podcast, except for Edward Scissorhands.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to go a little bit of an opposite route there and say being buried alive, I'm going to give a solid 2 out of 10 disembodied human skulls. I'm not sure if 0 is a number we'll use on our scale here. Maybe 1's the lowest. I don't know. What do you think, Nathan? Do we go as low as 0?
Are you going low because you don't want to be buried alive? Is that the criteria?
Well, you have to answer the question first. Is 0 an option, or is 1 your lowest rating option?
Theoretically, 0 is an option. If we watch like a movie that is the actual worst thing you've ever seen in your life, and there is 0 positive to say about it, it would be a 0. So 0 can apply, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, I'm still going to give it a 2 out of 10. I would give it a 1 out of 10 this is probably one of the worst ways to die, or one of the worst things you can experience if you were so lucky to not die from being buried alive. But I'm going to give it a 2 because if you have to die, this would at least make a good fucking story.
So you're giving it.
There's old so and so. Sucks he died, but did you know he was buried alive? So I'd like to give it an extra disembodied human skull, just based on the fact that around the bar or the coffee shop, this would make an interesting side note to your death. Like, oh, it sucks so-and-so died. Buried alive, though. Wow.
Then you're rating it low because you don't want to be buried alive. Is that correct?
Yeah, being buried alive would absolutely suck. But if I had to die, which unfortunately I probably do someday, I'm giving it a 2 because at least the story of being buried alive, at least that act, at least someone being able to say after the fact, he died. But it was due to being buried alive. I'm going to give it an extra star because that'd be kind of cool.
So I want to make sure we're on the same page here, trying to keep this on the rails. If you're going by that criteria, then I need to go by that criteria too. And I would give it a solid fucking 1. No thanks.
No thanks.
I'm good on that.
What was your first criteria for the 9?
My logic being was how effective... How strong of a concept is it in keeping with the calling all creeps aesthetics? Like how cool of a, I guess, idea is it? But whatever.
Yeah, I would agree on in that concept. I would agree with your 9 out of 10. I still think there are cooler ways to die. There are cooler ways in which I hope to die. But being buried alive is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone wants to start a cool new internet trend, go ahead and be prematurely buried.
Indeed, Bryce, indeed. Well, do we want to wrap up this very tipsy episode of Calling All Creeps, unless we've got anything else to add?
Well, I was gonna. How was your day, Nathan?
Productive. I finally crashed a little bit. Like, I've been in a manic state of working a full-time job and just, like, pushing out fucking songs and videos nonstop because I'm trying to really pursue that lately. I finally crashed and burned a little bit today and had to take like a 4-hour nap because I've just been not sleeping.
Good God, good.
So,
I feel that I've been getting hopefully like 4 hours of sleep a night.
that's not enough, man. That's not enough. I can tell.
You're telling me. So what time is it now? Yeah, I've got to be up in 5 hours, and so I know after we're done recording this, I'm definitely going to be getting hopefully 4 hours of sleep. We'll see. But yeah, no, I mean, I think your hard work's been paying off, man. You've been putting out some great stuff. Nathan is hard at work on the next Calling All Creeps album. We've got 5 or 6 songs done now. And, we're about halfway or so, a little less than halfway through. And so, this summer, still look forward to more spooky stuff. Again, day of recording, happy Summerween. Of course, this is coming out much after Summerween. But no, it was great. I threw my first Summerween party today. We had a bunch of people over. We had decorations and food and drinks and snacks and games and all sorts of fun stuff. And so it was a good little success. It was a good little our first little backyard party. It's a lot of fun. So, we're keeping it spooky. Fucking 365 here, all day, every day. As I was making sure I was showing everyone here my little studio space and showing everyone how great and spooky it was. But, we made a great little spooky Summerween party. Turned out good. I'm pretty proud of it. No one was buried alive during this production, nor during my Summerween party.
Unfortunately. Do better, Bryce.
Again, this is an October Society Media production. You can find all that we're doing all over social media. You can check out the music we're doing. You can check out Nathan's music, The Sleep Demons. You can check out Calling All Creeps, Super Springs, Witchbones, etc., etc., etc. And stay tuned for more stuff that we're doing. And I don't know. Again, I think this was just an exuberantly fun topic.
It puts a twinkle in your eye. Yes.
It puts a twinkle in my eye. I kind of I'm half tempted. I mean, again, I wonder how many people would do this on purpose with a very easy out. Like, in my mind right now, I think it would be very fun if I took a shovel out back in my backyard right now, painstakingly dug 6 feet down, and buried myself alive. But I'm at a point where I'm not that interested in dying anymore. So I would like an out. But I don't know. I think that would get my juices boiling, get my blood flowing if I went and buried myself alive.
Indeed, Bryce, indeed. But having said all of that, I think we've kind of stretched this topic beyond we've stretched it quite a ways. Why don't we say the magic words here and bid the audience farewell?
Until next time, creeps. Bad dreams.
Thank you for listening.
1,500 species worldwide. Some bats hibernate or bats migrate. Bats are nocturnal pollinators. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Come get your bad fact. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Welcome to bad class. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Come get your bad fact. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Welcome to bad class. Sex in just one night. Bats are blind but use echolocation. There are megabats and microbats and 3 species of vampire bats. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Come get your bad fact. Bad facts, these are bad facts. Welcome to bad class.